All right, everybody. That was the Rob Tui theme by ooh, we almost got another song there by Leroon. And welcome everybody. Welcome to All Things Fantasy Grounds, Episode 7, Database Corruption, Recovery, and Folder Structures. I think I can turn the clock off there. So tonight's show, we are going to talk about those things. And with me this evening, I have my co-host, as always, Leroon, and special guest John Nightsky, or Ensky as he's known on the forums and on Twitter and wherever else. So I'm going to have those guys introduce themselves. Leroon, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. Welcome, guys, to All Things Fantasy Grounds. I'm the founder of FGC, and we have a special guest with us, Mr. John Ensky. Take it away, man.
Hi guys, back here again to talk about folders and other things.
All right. So I'm going to switch to the screen where the viewers will all see whatever we see on my computer. And so let's do that. If I can ever remember, I believe it's not that one. It is not that one. It is this one. No, it is not. No, it is not that one. I can never remember which one it is. It should be
It's the
video
one with
recording.
the
There we
arrows.
go.
Yep.
It's video recording. Everybody just remember that and then yell at me before the show. So whatever's on my screen will be on your screen. And actually, a good thing to start with is this, because I tried to open, this is exactly what we're going to talk about tonight, in part. I tried to open my campaign, All Things Fantasy Grounds, which is just the screen that I usually have when we start the show. In case we need the table open, that's the one I use. And I got the database corruption error, so we're going to talk about that. So why did I get this, Leroon, you guys? Why did I get this?
Well, there's a lot of different reasons for that, and we can list a few possibilities. Can't guarantee you that's what the problem is, but that's basically an error you'll get for many different reasons within Fantasy Grounds.
And how do we
Usually,
fix it? Oh, go ahead, sorry.
well, there is a way to fix it, provided that you have other instances of this campaign. Now, if this is the first time you ever done it, you won't have a recovery file.
But I've
So
opened
that's
this many times, so there should be one.
correct. So if you see this, don't panic, don't freak out. Everybody calm down, as
Everybody
Rob would
just
say.
relax.
So once it does that, just go ahead and click OK or X out of it.
And it's going to
And
open, yeah, it's going to open it for me anyway. But it might not be the latest version that I had saved, right?
correct. So you may have lost work.
Yeah, so in the case of this is just an example campaign that we opened for the show. And I have the Window Saver extension in there, so I'll use that. So yeah, there's nothing in here that we need to worry about. There's a couple characters or whatever. But had I been playing a game, or had we, lost power during our game, or something like that that caused that, what can we do to ensure that we can fix that?
All right, so there's lots of different methods to create that, but we do have a way to look at your file structure directories, and we can go into your actual Fantasy Grounds data folder, and this would be the main data structure. But before we get to that, Ensky had a little bit of advice that would be useful before we even start all this troubleshooting.
Okay.
Yep.
So, it's a very lengthy process to actually get there. It's your C drive users, whatever your computer name is, app data, roaming, fantasy grounds, and then you get there. So instead of going through that every time, I just do it because I'm used to it because I modify a lot of games. You can right click in there and you can add a shortcut. And then you'll have to go through that process, pick the shortcut, and then just stick it on your desktop. And whenever you click that shortcut, it'll bring you right back to this folder.
So right click. Oh, just in here.
Yeah, so you'll right click in there and it'll create the you'll hit new and you'll hit shortcut. It'll ask you what you want to put for your shortcut, where you'll have to hit browse and do the drop down menu. But once you make that, you can take that shortcut and you can put it in a folder, you can put it on your desktop, and anytime you click that shortcut, it'll take you right back to this folder.
Oh, right. So I can go to users, app data, roaming, fantasy grounds, and then click OK, and then it's going to make that shortcut. and I'll call that Fantasy Grounds, or let's call it Fantasy Grounds folders. Folder. Click finish, and then there's the shortcut, which I can then right click on and send to my desktop, I believe. Send to my desktop.
You can do that. You can drag and drop it.
Right.
Anywhere
so
you want.
any number of things. Of course, Fantasy Grounds likes to hog the desktop anytime you. That's one thing I don't like about that. See, it it forces itself open whenever you're trying to do stuff like that. So, but you guys, I mean, this is not a class in Windows, but that's definitely a good suggestion. If you want to make a shortcut and then put it on your desktop or anywhere else, then that'll get you back to this folder really fast. What I do in Windows, like John said, he types it in because he's used to it, but I have quick access. Fantasy Grounds is always the #1 thing on the top of my quick access thing here in Windows, because that is literally the folder that I open the most. So it's always there. So if I don't have this open, all I have to do is open my Windows Explorer. It's going to open that, and it's going to go, and then I'm going to go right here, bam, Fantasy Grounds, there it is. That's what I do. And so it's 2 clicks away from me all the time.
So I had a question, John. Did you buy your Fantasy Grounds through SiteWorks or Steam?
I bought it through Steam, and if anybody already has Steam, it lets you pick where. If not, you can do it multiple ways. So once Steam downloads it, you can either download it to your C drive or any other drive, which makes it easier if you do it that way. But you can actually take that and you can move it to wherever you want. You can put your whole Fantasy Grounds in a folder on your desktop, and then you just have to relink it with Steam to where it's at, and Steam will just leave it there.
Oh, that's a great, yeah, because I don't do mine through Steam, and I'm glad you said that, because that's a great tip. So thanks for saying that, because a lot of people do use Steam, so, and they don't know where their folders are and whatever, so yeah, you can put it anywhere you want and just relink it. That's cool.
Okay, there's another way to access it, and that's your folder icon. So on your desktop, or excuse me, from Fantasy Grounds itself, when you launch the launcher, there's a folder in the upper right corner right there.
So you open data folder, and there it is.
Yep.
That's an even quicker way. Why it doesn't maximize it, I don't know, but that's a Windows thing, not a Fantasy Grounds thing. And store window. Okay, yeah, so right here, above where the license, above the thing, right below the X, click on this folder right here. Bam, there it is. Same place.
Yep.
So, good, excellent. So, back to what we were talking about. If you do get that corruption, yeah, if I click on something 150 times, that's what happens. You can go over here to your campaigns, and this is the one that we were in. And we're going to go over this in just a minute on all these different folders and what's in there. But the first one is campaigns. To find the one that you had open, and you'll see that there's different instances of this in here. The db.xml, that's what Fantasy Grounds looks at for all the information that you recently were toying with. You know, the combat tracker, the what images you had open, who the PCs were, every single thing that it looks at is there. That's why in some of these, you know, it's only 113K because we haven't really done anything in there. But if you opened another campaign, I'll just go real quick to, let's see, oh, what game do I have here? Oh, okay, my Wednesday Night Tales from the Yawning Portal, which, no, let's do one where I'm the DM, which is Tomb of Annihilation. So you can see here, this is much bigger. This is 1,283. So just to show you guys, I don't want to confuse people, but just to show you. So back into All Things Fantasy Grounds. So here's recent sessions, all the way back to February 10th. And so if this dbxml is corrupted, you can rename that, say to db.xml old or something, just, and you know, you don't want to erase it in case you still want to keep it. And then you can go to the most previous session and rename that dbxml, and then there it is there. And then now when you open Fantasy Grounds, it will open that file, and you should be good. You should have the most recent up-to-date information on your campaign, other than the one where it got corrupted and shut down, like if you had a power outage or, you know, I mean, like Layroon said, there's a million different reasons why that could happen, and I'm sure if you guys have played Fantasy Grounds for more than 6 months or a year, you've probably seen that a few times. So
Yep.
that's how you can fix that. And I'm not going to worry about it because there's nothing in that campaign that's important, so we'll just leave it at that.
Okay, I got a couple comments to make about that too.
Go ahead.
So when you're in your campaigns folder, you don't want to move files around as much as possible. So it's okay to add to Fantasy Grounds, but once you start taking stuff away, like let's go into one of your campaign folders, like that one. So once you start building a campaign or running a campaign, just for instance, the images folder.
That's probably going to be empty. Yeah, it's empty.
Right now it's empty, but normally in another campaign, let's look at one of your other folders, please.
Let's go to Tomb of Annihilation.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no images in there either.
Okay.
Here, I mean, I can give you one. I can give you one that we didn't talk about this before the show, so I didn't know you were going to do this. But here, I know there's one. I know this is a Hirelings and Henchmen is a thing that I'm building for someone on the DM's Guild. It's got like 100 NPCs in it that are Hirelings and Henchmen, and there's just a few images for that one, so they're in there like this.
Okay. So once you've placed images in that folder, your images folder, or anything for that matter, and you started working, and let's say you started working and building a module or adding something to existing module, once those images are in there, you don't want to move those around or rename them because it breaks the links that you've created within Fantasy Grounds. So that db.xml keeps the file names, the file sizes, and all the other data that it needs for the association within Fantasy Grounds. So when you lose your database, you're losing all the associated links, which is all your work pretty much that you've done for the day. So if
Right.
you move this stuff around and you have a database corruption, it's going to be very difficult to restore your session.
Right. And I would just like to add that most often when you get that error, when we were logging in and we got that error here, it showed up and it said, hey, your database is corrupt. More often than not, I'd say 95% of the time, you can just click OK and it'll take you into the campaign and everything will be fine. You might have just lost like the last 10 minutes or 5 minutes of whatever you recently changed because it auto saves as you go. The only reason we're walking you through what we're doing now is in case it is totally corrupted and doesn't work in any way, then you can kind of go back and, you know, you can get a previous save. Because it basically, every time you log out, it saves a backup copy of the most previous version. So I guess we should have maybe said that up front. We kind of buried the lead there, but like I said, if you get a corruption notification, 95% of the time you can hit OK and go in, and the worst that's happened is you've lost the last 5 minutes of the game or the session or the campaign you were working on. And if it's really bad, then you can go back and do it and change the name and you know, change it to this DBXL, one of these previous ones, and get back the more recent one. But if you do that, you're going to be losing everything you did from the current session or your most previous session, right?
And I've had it to where I had a antivirus software block my system from writing that DB XML file. And so I had like, you know, a week's worth of work that I was working on. For some reason, it updated and it clicked and it blocked me from saving it. So I had no idea that the data wasn't being saved in the database XML file.
Yeah,
so I've lost like months of work because of stuff like that. So you got to allow Fantasy Grounds to operate. And sometimes other programs or other things you have going in the background may keep Fantasy database file.
By the way, we got right before we started the show, like about 10 seconds before we started, that window popped up for us, and I got so excited because we were going to try to figure out how to create that, and it just happened coincidentally to happen to us, so we started with that. But I forgot to start the show the normal way by giving our disclaimer and telling about the prize. I mean, we just kind of jumped right into it. So just real quick before we continue, we do need to state that All Things Fantasy Grounds talk shows meant to teach and help, but our opinions from the three of us during the show are not those of Smiteworks USA LLC or Fantasy Grounds. This is just us doing our own thing, trying to help people. So We don't want people to think that this information comes directly from the company, which it does not. And we are also, courtesy of Leroon, we are giving away a standard license tonight as a prize during the show, which we'll do at a random time during the show tonight.
Yep.
So back to the folder structure. Were we done talking about that?
Just one more thing. Another thing that leads to database corruption sometimes is if you get impatient when Fantasy Grounds is shutting down, it may cause it not to save properly. So when you exit out of Fantasy Grounds, when you're in a session, if you've just looked at things and you didn't really type anything or make any corrections, then you can X out of Fantasy Grounds. But when you're actually exiting after you've done a lot of work, the cleanest way to do that is to save your campaign data by doing the /save in the save window, and then right-clicking on the desktop, and then click the X, and then click the arrow, which will actually dump you back down to the launcher. A lot of people just want to exit right out and get out of it. That doesn't always guarantee that Fantasy Grounds is going to save it for you. So what Rob's just doing right now is saving it, and the proper way to exit is to return to launcher.
Right, and a lot of times people will do this. They'll go XX like that.
Yep.
Or now let's see if I open that back up. We'll see if I got a database error, but I'll show you another way you can get that. If this opens properly, it won't. Sometimes that will work, especially if there's like I didn't change any data. I didn't do anything. I didn't alter anything, so all I did was open it and close it, so it should be fine. But if you want to be safe about it, yeah, you should do it that way. The other thing people do is they'll come down here and right-click on the actual app right down here and put close window like that, and that's not the way you want to close Fantasy Grounds if you if you want to save things or make sure that you didn't get any database corruption or whatever. So
Okay.
it'll let you do it, but that's not the preferred way of doing it.
Right. So that DBXML contains your modules that you were using, all the links that you created, all the text that you were writing for that. So it's basically a big list of links that you've created for either your campaign
This
or
is what
for
it
your
looks like.
custom content.
I mean, it's just people that know how to go in here and mess with stuff can do it, but this is just for people's interest. This is what a typical XML campaign DB file looks like.
You don't want to toy with that too much.
No, you don't. Not unless you know what you're doing. You do not want to toy with it.
All right.
All right. So let's see. Now we can start the show. We were going to talk about the folder structure. Well, we did. We started the show. We talked about database corruption, but now we're going to talk about the folder structure so that everybody understands what's in the folders for Fantasy Grounds, what you might want to do with those things or alter those things, and what definitely to not touch or leave alone. So the first one is the cache. So this is just the Fantasy Grounds folder. So when you go to your typical folder, which can be again under users, whatever your username is, mine's Rob Toohey, app data, roaming, Fantasy Grounds, or wherever you have it set up, that's the default. But if you did like what John said for Steam, wherever that might be, these are the things that are going to be in that. It's going to have all these folders, and it's going to have like 4 different files. And then I've got a couple screenshots in here, which just real quick, you might not have any, but for those of you that don't know, anytime you're playing Fantasy Grounds, you can hit the print screen key. I think it'll even work on this right here. Let's find out. Yeah, it did. So anytime that you have Fantasy Grounds open, you can hit the print screen key, and it will save a screenshot, and it'll just number it. So I'll show you some of the ones that I've done here. And then this is the one I just did there. So you can save an actual screenshot. So if you're playing a game and you get to a cool moment, or you're like, oh man, I really want to remember how this looks, you can just hit the print screen key and it'll save it. And that's where it'll be, is right here in this folder structure. And so like, I don't really need any of these. So these are things that you can absolutely erase if you want, because those are only things saved that you physically did yourself by hitting the print screen key. And if you don't
Right.
need them, you can erase them. But now we're going to talk about these different folders and what they do. So go ahead, guys. You can take over from here.
I just wanted to comment about the photos that you had. That's a cool thing, but also if you have a customer service related issue, you find something weird or messed up in your module or your game, and you think it may not be related to what you're doing, um, go ahead and take a snapshot with the print screen and send that to your tech support. That way they can get to look at it. Like if Zacchaeus helps you or Rob or anybody.
Yeah, then you can just take a screenshot and it'll be right here.
Yep.
Cool. All right, so cache. The first one on the list is cache. And if you open that, these folders that you're going to find in here are all the games you've played, whether they're your games or whether you've connected to someone else's table. So here's a bunch of Denver and Dragon stuff, 5e pickup games when I used to do that, but also Thursday one-shots from when I played with Stooner, and Unknown Whom's. Here's something from FGCon 9. That's still in there.
Wow.
Yeah, so, but, and sometimes you might go in this file and you'll recognize all the things that you have set up because you set up those games yourself. But other things you might not recognize, like Wednesday Night Mike Online. That was some, that was some game I played, obviously, with a guy named Mike on Wednesday nights. That's what he named it. And when I connected to his table, it saved, all the information in here, which is just the user settings, which is my dice color and all that kind of stuff, and then the campaign data from his thing. So that's what those are. Anything else to say about what's in the cache folder?
Yeah. Also, this cache folder is mainly when you're connected to someone else's table. So it's caching the settings and information from the table that you were connected to. So if you go to the launcher.
Oh, you know what? You're right. I misspoke. It is not your campaigns. It's only things that you've connected. And the reason that we see some of the ones that are mine names in here, it says February 20th. That's because I connected locally with a second instance of Fantasy Grounds. That's why they're in here. So this
Right, it has both.
Yeah, so this is only, but it doesn't have like it doesn't have Tomb of Annihilation in here, or because I've never connected it. But anyway, so these, yeah, so that's what that is. And you would never really necessarily need these. If you deleted all these, what would happen is next time you connect to that person's table, it's going to not remember any of your settings, and it's going to be like you connected for the first time. So it's not going to know your dice color. It's not going to know the windows you had open. It's not going to know any of that stuff.
Right. And there is sometimes a reason to purge this stuff. If you go to the Fantasy Grounds launcher.
Let's find out where it is. Join
in
game.
the launcher. There you go. So you can clear that data, and what that does is clears a lot of the settings and things. And the only time I've ever had to mess with that is if my DM or whoever's hosting the game changed something major and it wasn't agreeing with my cache folder. Then I would have to purge that data and then reconnect, and then that would help fix or at least troubleshoot the issue.
Yeah, and a lot of people's first reaction is to nerf their cache, and you don't want to do it unless you think you have to do it. Because what that'll do is reset everything from every game you play. So as soon as you log on to whoever's table that you've been logging on to for a year, you're going to have to reset all your stuff in there, which is not that big of a deal. It's just a pain in the butt. All your hotkeys are going to be gone. All your, dice color, everything else. All the shading from any maps that you were looking at is probably going to be weirded out. And so this is a use only. That's why it's a nuclear symbol. Only use it if you need to. But if you are connecting to somebody and it's corrupt, or the other players can connect but you can't or something, then maybe nerfing this player cache might help. The other thing you can do that's more of a specific targeted thing is to go to that specific campaign. Like say that was Wednesday Night Mike. I could go here to this and just delete that folder. Just delete that one only. And I don't play that game anymore, so it doesn't matter. But then now, if I connect to that table, I'll have to reset all my stuff. But that's like a 2-year-old thing. So.
Yep.
All right. John, anything we missed there?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, cool. So next folder is campaigns. And this is pretty obvious. This is anything that you have started by going here and putting create new campaign, choosing your rule set, and putting a title here. Whatever you put there is what's going to show up here. So the exception to that is Fantasy Grounds has a few of them that are hardwired in. So you'll always have a Tale of Daenor for 3, 5, and 4. You'll always have what's the other ones in here that they're always there? Maybe it's just those two. Oh no,
5e sample.
Yeah, 5e sample campaign. So I think those 3 will always be there. Matter of fact, yeah, it's these 3 here. Those will always be in there because when you update or download Fantasy Grounds, it puts those in there. And then all the rest of this stuff is stuff that I titled myself and that I'm working on. And then I even made an extra folder here for archives, because those of you that know me and know what I do, you're like, that can't be all Rob has. Well, no, it's not. So here's the rest of everything that I've ever done. And I put build or game before each one just for me, so that I know, is this a module I'm building, which is, you know, these friggin' 150 ones here, or is it a game, which is, there's 5e pickups and Battle Royale that I saved just in case we ever get back to those. But this is basically all the current stuff that I'm working on. So here's the campaign for the show, which is just nothing's in it. I just did that for the table's sake. And then I'm building Unknown Whom 2 and Creature Codex. I'm not building Creature Codex yet, but I started a campaign so that when that comes to me, I can start doing it. Here's my, actually I just made updates to the class and the race. And so to kind of clean up my desktop, what I do is I don't need to work with those anymore. So I'm going to drag those into the archives and get them off my thing. Hirelings and Henchmen I'm working on. Quest of Dune 4, there's 16 of those. So eventually there'll be that one, and then there'll be 15 more of those in here that I'm working on. And then there's just a bunch of other stuff. And then my games, I have the Wednesday night game. When I DM'd part of that, I did the White Plume Mountain part. So actually, I really don't need that anymore because I'm not DMing that game anymore. So I could delete that file. I don't need it anymore. And then here's the Friday night game. I don't dare delete that. And then a bunch of this other stuff. So that's all the stuff that you've made. So with, again, just to reiterate, with the 3 exceptions of the ones that Fantasy Grounds forces on you, anything else in this file, anything else in this campaigns folder will be stuff that you created.
Yep. And just as a little backup thing, if you decide you want to keep some of your images that you've created and you've dragged them over to the campaign folder where the images are, make sure you back those up, or those are copies, because once you delete that folder, you may lose some artwork or some custom tokens or something like
Right. So like, for example, the Hirelings and Henchmen, this is what I'm working on. And there are some images here that are in that. So now if I were to delete this, if I deleted, you know, if I right click and delete, don't do it, it's going to take everything, and there's going to be no file there. So I actually do have, you know, I have those backed up over here. Andrew K. Wood, Hireling and Henchman, art. So I do have them backed up right there. But you see they're named. They're not named. They're just named whatever the file names were where I pulled them out with Adobe Acrobat. But
Right.
Whereas over in Fantasy Grounds, under campaigns, Hirelings and Henchmen, where is it? Those images, I've actually named them all. And in this case, they don't really tie into anything in the module. They're just pieces of art. So I literally just named them Art 1, Art 2, Art 3. But sometimes you're going to have them, you know, like this is the cover, this is the logo. And sometimes you're going to have, you know, Stronghold, you know, Cobalt Stronghold, or whatever the names are going to be, you're going to have there. So
Very good. There's a lot to be said to be organized. So
be organized, yeah. And I realize that we're going through this very fast, but that's because the show's an hour. We're 30 minutes in, and we're only on the 3rd thing. So, the next one is, anything else about campaigns, guys?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
Next one is characters. So this folder might not be there. If you open up your Fantasy Grounds thing, you may or may not have this. This is just a place that you can store. Actually, you probably will, because it's going to say 4E, 5E, core. Yeah, you might actually have this for sure. But Fantasy Grounds doesn't really do anything with these folders specifically that I'm aware of. These are just places to store your characters. And you see that I have just a S ton of characters here. I almost said shit. That's fine. And then what that's for is if you're in Fantasy Grounds, let's just get in here. You can, whenever you pull up a PC or whenever you open a PC, if you want to import a character, you can import an XML character from any place on your hard drive. But it's just really nice to have them in Fantasy Grounds characters so that you know where they are. So I'll just pull in any one of these that I see when I go here. So I'm going to go to the edit list. I'm going to do the import blue circle, import characters, and it's going to open up somewhere in the last place I was in the PyCharm projects thing. So I'm going to go right here to Fantasy Grounds. I'm going to go to right to characters, and then I can pull any one of these characters in. Let's pull in Cousin Clark. So pull him in, and there he is.
Yep.
And there's Cousin Clark. That's from the Wednesday night game. So that's how that works.
All right.
All right. Anything else to say about characters, guys?
Nope.
All right.
Not really.
Docs. So we discovered this today. If you go to your docs files, if you have the Savage World rule set, you'll find a Savage World supplement in here and also Savage Worlds Deluxe documentation. If you don't have Savage Worlds, more than likely you're not going to find anything in there. And there may be documentation for other rule sets in there, but there isn't for anything other than like I have Savage Worlds and I obviously have 5e. So there may be other things in there, or usually not, but they're just for reference only. And so, not just to tell you guys what they are, but not anything you need to pay attention to, unless you're interested in reading the Savage Worlds documentation, if you have Savage Worlds. And I think if you don't have that rule set, it probably just won't show up in there.
All right.
Extensions. Okay, here we go. So you guys all know what extensions are. I have way too many of them and I don't use half of them. But any extension that you get, and usually 99% of the time you're going to be getting these from the Fantasy Grounds forums, and you're going to download an ext file and put it in here, and those are going to show up when you go to open a campaign. They're going to show up where you can turn them on or off. So that list right here, you can turn these, you can click it and turn it on, or take the little red bubble thing out and turn it off. And there's just a myriad of these things. Some work, some don't, some work great, some you can't do without. A lot of times you'll see in most people who have Fantasy Grounds, no matter what you have, as long as you have some of the 5e stuff, there'll be these the decal ones for every adventure that you have. So you see here's Horde of the Dragon Queen, Lost Mines, Monster Manual, etc., etc. And if you turn those on, those are what allows you to put the decals on the desktop. But then here's Deluxe Oz extensions for sound and for linking, and there's the Hero Point one. So you can get extensions and put them here and use them or not use them. And basically what an extension is just a zipped up. It's just if you change the extension to ZIP and then open it up, it'll show you what files are in there. But unless you know what you're doing, or unless you're making extensions, or you have express knowledge of what to do, these would be things not to mess with. We're just letting you know what's here. And if you want to get into extension making, or you want to do stuff yourself for Fantasy Grounds, that's certainly something you can do. And there's all kinds of forum entries about how to do that and stuff. I don't really mess with this too much. I know what they do and I know how to alter them if I need to, but that's because I've done a few hours of research on it. But more often than not, you're just gonna put whatever extensions you download from the forums in here, and then once they're in this folder, you'll just turn them off here or turn them on, and that's really the furthest involvement you'll have with it.
I got a couple comments about that.
Okay.
When you're researching extensions, is something you should do is research them. So just because someone says it's a good one, it does not necessarily mean it's good or bad. You need to go to the Fantasy Grounds extensions library and the forums and read up on them before you do anything. And so you should make sure that has been updated or that the author has addressed any issues that it may cause. And a lot of times the extensions, I wouldn't say a lot of times, but sometimes the extensions will cancel each other out, or they'll function strangely because they got another one doing another thing. So you're kind of at your own risk there. And so all this does is extends the functionality of Fantasy Grounds. It does not necessarily update with Fantasy Grounds.
Right. So effect removal, which some players still like to use, but it isn't needed anymore because they actually kind of rolled that functionality into Fantasy Grounds itself. That's where you can go to the combat tracker and remove an effect that you place there, and players can even do it. But you see here they got a big red. This doesn't work with anything beyond 3.3.2. It needs an update. So this is just the core RPG and 5e rule set extensions, and you can go and look for those and read through them and see which ones you might like. Oh, I had another thought about that, but I've already forgotten what it was. Damn it.
Hey, Ensky, do you got any comments about that?
I personally don't use them that much.
Oh, there you go. That jiggered the comment in my head. Not using them. Yeah, you don't have to use them, and there's really only 2 or 3 that I like that I use very often. But what you will hear is when Fantasy Grounds makes a major update, the powers that be will always tell you, don't, all the extensions that aren't officially part of the program may break. So each and every one of these could break when they do a major update. Now, most times that doesn't happen, but they just warn you, if you update Fantasy Grounds, like whenever they go to 3.3.5, let's say, for example, they'll tell you that if something isn't working to, go and close all your extensions before you open the program. Just make sure all these are unchecked, and then you can kind of beta test yourself which ones work and which ones don't. Like I said, 90% of the time you won't really have a problem, but some of them they do break, and you do have to like this one. There's a big red warning here that says, "Hey, this needs an update." So if you're using that extension, you might run into trouble. So some of these extensions can be quite fantastic, and this is just a one page. There's many more. If you search on the Fantasy Grounds forums, or if you just search in Google like I did, you saw me do it, Fantasy Grounds extensions, you can find a bunch of different, and you can find the wiki, and even information on how to make them and all this other. I mean, that's a whole different ball of wax. But anyway, just to let you guys know that folder and what that's for and what's in there.
Yep. And that's just one of those things that you have to experiment with. It's not really documented. The only documentation you're going to get is from the forums and from other people using it. So I
Right.
reported an error with Fantasy Grounds a while back ago when I first started. And I didn't realize that Fantasy Grounds did a major update. So I thought that Fantasy Grounds was broken. And what I think it was Zacchaeus that helped me with that. He said, "Well, do you have any extensions?" And I said, "Yeah." And I started naming some off. So he had me unselect them, and when I booted up Fantasy Grounds, everything was working.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the first line of defense whenever you troubleshoot a problem with any other member of the community. The first thing they're going to tell you to do is unload all your extensions and then try it. And then if there's still an error, then we can work on it. But usually it's an extension that's messing whatever you're doing is, whatever you're trying to get done is extension messing it up. All right.
I love you, man.
Hey, Sergeant Cathern, thanks for the sub. Appreciate that. So maps. Maps, I believe, isn't even a file folder that is installed automatically. I think I put this in here, but a lot of people do. And that's just if you want to keep extra maps available to you. I just shoved a couple. There's even a PSD file in here for Photoshop. But I just put maps in there in case I need them. And, I'm in Fantasy Grounds and I want to open a map. I can get to it by, I'll show you when we get in there. But this is, some of you, when you're looking at your file folder structure, you might not even have maps as a thing there. So Fantasy Grounds doesn't really look for it or do anything with it. That's just a place to store maps if you want to do it. Let's see if I can get to it here. So if I go to folder, it's going to try to open the images of the current campaign that I'm in. So if I go back, if I back out to Fantasy Grounds and go to maps, then I can, I can I can have all these be here and, you know, have me at least know where they are and stuff. But again, not a normal part of it. Layroon, it seems to me that there was something you were going to say about that.
Oh, I was just going to say we made those easier so it's organized so you can find your maps while you're playing. So you're not digging through 50 folders.
Yeah, so it's really yeah, exactly. So it's an organizational thing rather than a functionality thing.
Right.
And if you have your map stored in somewhere, you know, like I have pictures and maps. I've got you know, there's just everything here. I've got folders beyond folders of Zovia maps. I got everything. So it's just a place to store maps. Modules, however, this is what's going to be loaded up on your machine. Every module that you have that isn't a part of Fantasy Grounds, so like all my Rob Toohey stuff, everything I've ever bought from the DM's Guild, everything I've ever made, it's just loaded down. And when you open your Fantasy Grounds, the library, everything that's in that folder is going to be here. So there's all the Rob Toohey stuff. There's all the stuff I've bought, all the campaigns, all the adventures. I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on. So if you want to, a little trick that I do is much the same as the campaign files. I also do a folder inside the modules folder. I make another folder called rarely used. Where is it? Here we go. Rarely used mods. And I put in that folder all the other mods that I hardly ever use. And then within that folder, I have all my Adventures League stuff. So there's 113 Adventures League modules. So what this does is, for me, when I open Fantasy Grounds, instead of opening 250 modules, I only open 120 or whatever. But that'll be where everything gets stored. Every time you create a module by using the export function in Fantasy Grounds, if you're in a campaign and you're building something, you're building a monster manual or a story or an adventure or whatever, and you do this export thing and you fill out all this module export. I did /export in the chat window. As soon as you fill out all this stuff and hit save or export, that's exactly where that's going to go, is in this modules folder right here.
Nice.
So the suggestion is, know what it is, know what's in there, don't mess with it. If you start deleting stuff, that means that, you know, whatever mod, like if I go here, let's just pick, if I go Rob Toohey Magic Shops and Random Rarity Tables, if I go and I delete that, then I can say goodbye to, let's look at it here. I can say goodbye to this Rob Toohey Random Magic Shops, and then I have to go back to the DM's Guild and download it again. So,
Ooh.
Hey Max Form, thanks for the follow. Welcome to the stream. So I know my tendency is that I'm one of these guys that my email box has to be empty and all my file folders need to be clean. And if I have old stuff in here, you know, I'll go here to date modified and go, what's from 2015? I don't want it, and delete it. And I get all crazy and obsessed with that. But you want to definitely be careful not to delete anything out of this folder unless you absolutely know for sure that it's something you don't care about, don't want, and will never use again. Anything else, guys, about modules?
Yeah, I'm asking Celestian in the chat that basically I was wondering if you have a ton of mods, if that slows down your startup.
Yes, it does. The more mods
Okay.
you have, that slows your startup down. So my startup takes quite a while because, I mean, just look at it. I mean, and sometimes I do go through here and I go, like, oh, you know, here's one. I'm not going to use that for a minute. And, you know, I don't need that. So then I'll just drag it to a different file folder and I'll put it in my case, I have just a folder called rarely used mods. And Fantasy Grounds will only look here. If you put it in a subfolder, it won't look there, so it'll just skip it. But then if you go back to that, like all of a sudden, let's say I get a wild hair up my ass and I'm gonna run every Adventures League module for the first 5 seasons, which I have, and I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna go find them, and then I'm gonna copy all those and move them to modules. That way, when I open it up, when I go to my library, every single one of those will be in here, but it'll take forever to load.
Do note though that if you do that, you will have to restart Fantasy Grounds.
Yes, Fantasy Grounds only recognizes modules that are in the module folder prior to opening the program. Good point.
As well as tokens.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. And speaking of modules, to run modules, you need to have a Fantasy Grounds license. So why don't we give one away?
All right.
So
So what's
Layroon,
the keyword?
let's do it. Let's do the raffle. Let's do the keyword. Let's
Okay.
have it be. Let's make it a little difficult.
Okay. Let's let the crowd decide. What do you think? No,
So
you got it.
the keyword is going to be Layroon, which is who's giving you this module. So
Spelled
let's. It is Learun.
Yes.
What is it?
Capital L.
Oh well, Jesus Christ! Everybody, calm down.
Said hard.
I wonder if syntax. I don't even know that matters. Somebody should use a small L, and we'll see if it works. Okay, so the raffle has started. If you would like to win a standard license, courtesy of Layroon, type !Layroon in the chat. Somebody can use a small L, and I'll tell you if it works. And if you you misspelled Layroon.
Well, that's what's gonna make it harder. See.
So Chumslinger and Tim Dog both used a capital. Somebody use a small one, and we'll see if it works. No one is following my instructions. God damn it! Everybody loses. Everybody loses. No, I'm just kidding.
Just kidding, guys.
Okay. Steelbeard used a small L, and it didn't, and it did work. So so a small L does work. The Steelbeard got entered. All right. So yeah, everybody who wants to win a license, go ahead and enter the contest, and we will move on with the show, and we'll let that count down for 4 more minutes.
I noticed CN. There you go. There you go, CN.
Okay, so portraits. Portraits is pretty obvious. The thing to keep in mind is that portraits and tokens are not the same thing. Portraits are the things that go in your character sheet, whereas tokens are something that goes on the opposite side of your character sheet, but also on the map. So if I open up a character sheet here, this is a portrait and this is a token. So the token is on the right, the portrait is on the left, and they can be different. So if I went down here to tokens and decided, do I have any tokens? Yeah, put that there, and I can make, I can make the portrait and the token different. But as far as the file folder structure, any of the portraits that you have in here will be what is available to you, as far as I know, by one thing, and that is on a character sheet. When you double click the portrait up here, it will open that. It will open all of those up and let you choose which one you have. And Fantasy Grounds, depending on what
Cheerbits, Cheerbits in the stream. Thanks for the Cheerbits.
Fantasy Grounds College, Cheerbits. Depending on what rule sets you have and what adventures you have, there will be a myriad of that's twice tonight I've used the word myriad of portraits available. But any of the ones that you have that you've added, like if you want to go to the internet and get some different pictures to use on your character sheets, this is where you would put them. You'd go to Google Images and get whatever you wanted and come in here and put them in your Fantasy Grounds Portraits folder. And when they're in there, they'll be here. So I can pick that one and do that like that.
Question from the chat.
Yes, sir.
Did user Cian get registered with your...
Let's find out.
Okay.
Let's find out. Yes, Cian is in there.
Another question from the chat. If they already have standard, should they apply?
No.
No.
Because then they just have another license.
Yeah, it doesn't help you. The thing is, though, if you definitely know a friend who wants to game with you and who wants to play Fantasy Grounds with you, then you're probably okay, because then you can just award the license to them. But if you already have one, this doesn't really help you.
Shadzar said to remove him from the list.
All right, let's see if I can. Ooh, a new thing that Rob doesn't know how to do. Well, if we draw Shad, we'll just draw another one instead.
Okay.
All right, so a minute left, everybody. Type !Leyrune if you would like to be entered for the standard license. There's my image scraper, still at work. Still at work, scraping images.
So if you guys win, just send me an email and I'll hook you up. You have to send me an email that's registered or going to be registered with the Fantasy Grounds official forums on their website.
Yeah, so, and by the way, for anybody that doesn't know this, how he's going to do that is, and you guys can all do this for your friends for birthdays or holidays or whatever. Anything that you buy on the Fantasy Grounds store, there'll be a button in your order history, and within 7 days, you can then gift that item to someone else. So that's what Leyrune is going to do, is he's going to purchase a license and then gift it to whoever, whatever email wins the contest. But you guys can do that too. So if you have friends that you want to get a Fantasy Grounds module for, or you want to buy them a map pack or whatever it might be. That's not a widely publicized thing that you can do, but it's a recent thing.
Cheer
as of
bits.
about
Cheer bits in the stream. Thanks for the cheer bits.
like within the last 6 months, I think. Fantasy Grounds College, cheer bits, BitBoss. Oh, we can't see the BitBoss because we're not doing the. Well, I guess we can here. If I go right over here, BitBoss Grayskin. It says still. Is that right? That can't be right.
Probably.
Oh yeah, because he had 9,000, and that's why. So, all right, back to what we were doing. Oh wait, it might be time for the contest.
Yep.
Oh snap! Okay, here we go, everybody. Everybody's in. I'm gonna draw a winner. Oh, Myth Taken. Congratulate. Boo, Myth Taken, not a follower. Boo. Hit that follow button, Myth Taken. But you will still win. So Myth Taken, you need to make sure and get a hold of Leyrune. And Leyrune, how can he do that?
Well, if you join us at Fantasy Grounds College, if you're not already a member, now we'll put that in the chat.
Done.
Just follow that link. Join the Discord server, and you can private message me. I'm called Founder Leyrune in there. And once I get your email address and I know that that's going to be associated, okay, great. He's already a member. So once I get your email address, just send that to me and I will gift that to you through the Fantasy Grounds store.
Cool. Not a follower, not a follower, not a follower. Refresh, refresh, not a follower. I'm just kidding. All right. So, all right, back to it then. Let's go to the next thing, which is we did modules, and so next one is, no, we did portraits. So rule sets. So rule sets is this is just what you have. 3, 5, 4E, 5E, Core, Fate, Numenera, Pathfinder, and all those except for Savage Worlds come with Fantasy Grounds, I believe. And then Savage Worlds I have because I bought. So that's you don't even really want to mess with this. That's just the rule sets you have installed, and that's
cheer bits in the stream. Thanks for the cheer bits.
Cheer bits. Thank you, Gwydion. Thank you, sir. So that's just where Fantasy Grounds store those. So rule sets, don't pay attention, don't erase it, don't go in, don't mess with it. Tokens. Leyrune, you want to cover tokens, or John, if you want to do it. Difference between host and shared.
Leyrune, if you want to start answering some of these streams questions.
Sure.
Hey,
so
Charles, thanks for the follow, man.
Folder, you really have two choices. Once you install Fantasy Grounds and you start buying tokens, you'll have two folders. One of them is shared, which is shared between you and the players, and the other one for the host is only for you. So if you want players to have a selection of Fantasy Grounds tokens to utilize in your campaign, you can place those in there, but I recommend you don't put too many. Just put the ones that you're going to actually allow or use. You want to give them more choices, you can always, add them later. For the host folder, that would be a section where you would have all the tokens you're going to use for your campaign. So you don't want to load those up too heavily with tokens because those can cause issues down the road. So you only need a few tokens for each game session. So be sparing with it. And when you load tokens in Fantasy Grounds, if you have a lot of high quality PNG ones, it's really going to potentially add up, and along with maps and books and everything else. So be sparing on your images and your tokens. And so when you share those, you don't really have to share them. You can assign them to a player, because that cuts down on the burden of the 3.5 gig cap, or the box that Fantasy Grounds operates in at the current moment. So that's just a word of advice.
Right. And so in my particular case, I don't have any tokens in the shared folder, so I don't have to worry about that. If I wanted to put some in there for players to be able to use, I would. I could put them in there. And then in the host one, I only have 5 in there. And what I do is I tend to keep that cleared out. Like when I start a new campaign, I empty it. And then I go put tokens in there one by one as I need them. So you can see these same 5 ones here are the ones that are in, if I open up the tokens thing here, it's those same 5 tokens right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that I can, drag and put on a map or put on the desktop if I want. And this is like for, oh, you dropped your bow, okay, I'll put that on the map. Or you got a spiritual weapon, okay, we'll say your weapon's an axe. And you can put them on the desktop like this, which is, that's just for fun, but normally you're going to throw those on a map. But any of the other bags that are here, URC tokens are ones that come with whichever thing you have open in the tokens pack, or whatever rule set you have, and I think that's probably blank. Yeah, that's blank. So if you want to make sure you're not using too much memory for Fantasy Grounds and whatever, you want to keep your tokens to a minimum, and by putting them here in the host folder, tokens host, you can be able to grab them. And like if somebody had some other bucket of water, I could go elsewhere on my hard drive, find a bucket of water, and drop it in right here. And then when I did that, it would also show up right here next to these. So that's that. All right.
Huh.
Utilities.
I was gonna say one thing about that one.
Oh yeah, tokens. Go ahead.
So with the tokens, you want to be careful because you can take up a lot of space by like having a lot of them in there, but they won't take up as much as if you had a bunch of them loaded at the same time. Does that make sense?
So how do you have them in there but not load them?
So what you can do is you can store them in a separate folder and then pop them in when you're going to need them for that game. You will have to restart Fantasy Grounds and things like that. But like say you have like 5,000 tokens, that will slowly like just slow everything down. But also if you have 100 tokens but you have 200 of them on your map, that's also going to slow it down a ton.
Right. So you guys can see over here in my pictures, I have, I don't know, 4,000 tokens, maybe some. I've got tokens for everything, like name an item. Bench. Do I have one? Yes, I do, right there. I have tokens for everything. And what I would do is if there was a bench, I would copy this bench, copy it, go back to my Fantasy Grounds, tokens, host, pop it in here, paste, boom. And now there's the bench right there. It just came in.
Yep.
So, and that's what I do is every time I start a campaign, get some new players together and say, hey guys, don't quit on me. We're going to play for a year and a half. And they go, okay, let's do it. Then I clear all these tokens out and I build this as we go, rather than just when I first got all those tokens, I loaded them into Fantasy Grounds and it just would crash every time. I had to like basically wipe it off my hard drive and reinstall it with no tokens, because it'll try to load every token you have if you don't keep them in separate places. So that's a good point. All right. Utilities. So we discovered this before the show. We'll just open it to show you. There is a utility. If you install Fantasy Grounds, this comes with it, I think. It's a character converter, and it is a executable file that helps you to convert files from 3.5 and 4E and Pathfinder and Savage Worlds. We're not really sure. None of us knew this was in there till today. So our thing that we would like to say about this is explore and use at your own risk. Manage modules, PC gen sheets. Nobody's ever mentioned this to me. I've never seen it before. So you know, like I said, use at your own risk. Look, I'm even fucking it all up right now. I don't even know what the hell I'm doing. I'm out of here. How do you close this? Get rid of it. Close window.
Hit reject changes.
Reject changes. There we go. So anyway, and look, it even created some INI files and a temporary, like, you know, that none of that was there before. So I'm gonna actually get rid of all that.
Yeah, I'm not even sure that's been updated or. If
So yeah,
still
and God knows what it is or why it's there, but just to let everybody know, because you know we're thorough and we go through everything. So once again, in the utilities file or folder, there is a character converter, whatever that does. It's not going to hurt anything if you open it up, but unless you research what that's for or can make use of it by converting other things from previous older games or whatever, I wouldn't mess with it. And then there's Vault. So Vault has DAT files in it that Fantasy Grounds writes and rewrites and keeps track of all your information. Don't mess with it. Pretend it doesn't exist, but don't erase it. My advice about Vault is know that it's there and don't F with it.
Yeah, don't touch that unless somebody in customer service or someone that's actually knows what they're doing instructs you to do that.
Right. That's sort of back end stuff. And then there are a few more files in the main folder here. You can see console log, definition XML, global registry LUA, install log, and update log. So that's information that you don't want to mess with. Fantasy Grounds uses that every time you update or every time you run it. It checks all that stuff and looks through it to make sure. Some of these files are used so that when you update Fantasy Grounds, instead of having to update the whole thing and it takes 25 minutes to load everything, it already knows what you've loaded and what's updated, and so it only does the particular things. Over the past year or year and a half, they've made that a much faster process. So those files are there to help with that. So my advice is, you know, don't mess with them. Remember that if you take a screenshot, it's going to appear here next to that. So when you're messing with screens, and it's going to see how it put it right there. So if I go delete that, that's fine, but you want to be careful. Don't highlight like that and now delete or anything. Don't get crazy. So you just got to be real careful about that. And so I'm going to delete that screenshot. Boom. All right, so we have gone through, gentlemen, everything. Gentlemen being the people that are on the show with me, not the viewing audience. I would include ladies in that. But yes, we've gone through everything. So now we should just make sure and we answered everybody's questions about what we went through. And also, guys, if you have questions about Fantasy Grounds, anything, now's the time to ask. Doesn't have to be about what we covered tonight. You guys are free to ask anything you want.
Yep, 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, sure.
Oh yeah, I know one thing I forgot to mention when we were doing extensions is we're gonna actually do a show on one. So if you guys want to join another time.
And Celestian will be our special guest on that. That show is March 13th, so that's only a few short days away. Today's show we did. I can green that out. Also, before we forget, while we're answering questions, we want to mention both Spring Break and FGCon, and also we're going to have a show about those as well. So, Lord Leyrun, why don't you mention to people what Spring Break is and when that is?
All right, so ever since we had the college theme, I figured, you know, what's a college without spring break? So I came up with the idea of just letting loose and letting people just play games or run games in the college without any worry, no real lessons or anything, just a big free for all. I was going to make a extensive schedule and all that, and I gave up on that idea. So what I encourage you guys to do is partner up with your allies and your friends in the college, or bring your friends over and invite them to come over and check the college out, and also to play games or to run your first game or whatever it is. And so this is be a way to let you guys blow off some steam, to form new friendships. Perhaps you'll create your own tables after this. But my ultimate hope is that you guys all help each other out and that you grow and you just build your own campaigns. I mean, that's my ultimate dream there for you guys.
Excellent. And that's going to be from like the middle of March till the end of March for like 2 weeks. It's going to be a huge, big deal.
Keiko asked if a non-regular FGC DM can run a game. Absolutely.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, absolutely. And the more the better. And also, just a reminder to everybody, I have the website up here, it's fg-con.com. That's happening in April. That's the middle of April. It's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And there's lots of stuff going on there. You guys can get into games. You can run games. They do all the rule systems. Not just 5e. They do Cthulhu and Savage Worlds and Numenera and just Castles and Crusades, on and on and on. And also, Leyrune and some staff members from FG College will be a part of that as well. So if you go to that website, you can click on the event list, and if you want to DM and sign up, you can do that. All community run, and here's some of the stuff that's already on the schedule. You can see some games filling up, Savage Worlds, Elite Dangerous, coding tutorial. Ooh, coding tutorial. What kind of bullshit coding tutorial? Rob Toohey needs to find out about that. Being run by Damned. Excellent. Oh man, he's going into it. Look at this. He's deep in. I gotta go. Jesus. I didn't even know that was happening. That's not a game. That's a coding tutorial. I gotta sign up for that.
So if you're
All
a
that in
DM,
90 minutes.
90-minute session will discuss Fantasy Grounds file system structure. Probably what we just went through. That's funny. He's just gonna point you to this video. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I need to check that out. But anyway, Fantasy Grounds a Con 12. It happens like twice a year. Usually April and October is when they do it. So keep that in mind, everybody. As well as the spring break, which goes on for a long time, like 2 weeks, as Leyrune said. So get over to FGC. Once again, we'll put that in the chat.
and make sure if you're a DM that you register your game soon, because they have a little bit of a process to do it. So when you get there, make sure you read the instructions and the FAQs. You can also private message Damned, and I'm sure there's probably other couple people in the Fantasy Grounds official forums.
Yeah, Damned, who you'll find on the forums, he's the one that runs this whole thing. He basically, that's his WordPress website. He's been doing it for 6 or 7 years, however long it's been. And he's the guy that puts it all together. And if you go and sign up on the back end as a DM, he'll help you if you have trouble like putting in your game or whatever it is. But yeah, sign up and everything is just over there. So if you go to FGCon, I think they have a what do you call it, a FAQ or a thing that tells you what you can do if you have problems. I haven't gone there. Obviously, I was surprised by that coding thing. I'm like, oh my god, I haven't looked at it yet. But anyway, that's happening. So our next show Tuesday will be how to advertise yourself to DMs for Fantasy Grounds, and so that specifically is going to cover like looking for games, how to write those, what discords and forums and that you can go to try to find Fantasy Grounds games to get into, and also if you're a DM, how to find players. So Fury Fate will be our special guest for that, and we'll go through how you can do all that, and that'll be Tuesday night.
Yeah, Furied was one of my first students or first players at my table. She's one of the first groups I ran. So I can go into the process of how I recruited her, how she sold herself as a player, how I advertised, how I run the game. And a lot of times people come into the college looking for a game. And the main thing is that there's a shortage of DMs. So when you go out there looking, it's kind of hard to find one because a lot of them are short on DMs. It's not that they don't want you. It's usually because there's not enough DMs to run everyone.
Absolutely. And so
we're trying to address that.
We're going to go over that. We're going to have a whole show about it. So if you're not only if you're a player or a DM that wants to know that, but if you have friends, if you know anybody who either has just started with Fantasy Grounds or they are thinking about starting with Fantasy Grounds, get them to that show, because this is going to tell them right away. A lot of people go online, they play D&D at their kitchen table with their friends or in college, or and then they're, people move away, and so they try to get online and they want to play games online, but it's really hard hard for some people to connect with others and to, you know, learn how to get into a group or get into a game, especially a campaign or anything that's longer than a one shot. So we're going to cover all that. So especially if you know people that don't know about us, you know, get them here for Tuesday night show and we will help them.
Yep. And I think one of the shows that Shadzard brought up that we may want to do in the future would be to show DMs, especially your content creators, how the steps or the procedures on how to start entering their own stuff into Fantasy Grounds.
So module making, I could have swore I put that on here. I guess I don't. That is an excellent idea.
Yep. That would be
So,
a Rob 2E show there.
I think that is going to be module making. We'll reschedule that at his convenience with special guest Shadzar.
There you go.
Since he thought of it, we're going to make him be here for that.
Awesome.
So Shad, PM me and let me know what date you want, Tuesday or Sunday.
Yep. Good suggestion, Shadzar.
Yeah, that is a good suggestion. And you can look here, Shad, and see it's basically every Tuesday and Sunday. Anything that's not highlighted is available. So even the 20th and the 25th of this month, there's just ideas in there. As a matter of fact, I should move these. Move them down to. We've asked Shad, but he has not confirmed.
Right.
So he's red.
Well,
He doesn't
Shad
have
says he has
voice
no
capability.
voice. Yeah.
He has no voice?
Nope.
Oh, you mean he's saying he doesn't have voice altogether ever. He doesn't have a microphone and all that?
Right.
Well, all right, that's easy. Delete. There you went. There you were, and there you went. If that ever changes, Shad, we can. I thought you were a player in Geo's games all the time. How do you not have a mic? Maybe you're just a viewer and a participator on chat. If that ever changes, Shad, you let us know. And by the way, guys, if you do have ideas for shows that you want us to cover, just get a hold of us. PM either Leroon or myself in Discord and let us know, and we'll get it on the list. So some of the upcoming shows, besides how to do that, how to advertise, and we are going to actually do a Spring Break FGCon show, which will happen right before Spring Break, and get everybody the full information on that. We're going to do one on extensions, one on maps. This one specifically on April 8th is a streaming show with special guest Lazy Sooner, who's going to give away over $100 and maybe way more than that worth of prizes that day. We usually give away a prize of some kind every show, but he's going to go apeshit crazy on April 8th. And then here are some of our other ideas. We are going to have a show with Mask that's coming soon. Mask lives in Scotland, and so what we're gonna do is we're gonna record that show with him because he's all way different hours than us. But what we will do is we will record the show, but we will play it on a Sunday or Tuesday live, and we'll be in the chat, and we can answer questions during the chat, and then after the show plays, we'll stick around and talk to you guys for a few minutes and answer questions again too. And that's a really cool thing. Just a quick preview. NPC Engineer, for those of you that don't know what it is, just open it up. Bam, here it is. You can put NPCs. You can put information in, and then it makes this, and then you can save it in Fantasy Grounds. Bam, it's cool. Okay, that's all you get. Yeah.
Hey, Shadzar said you can always prime 400 questions for me to answer in advance. So my answer to that, Shadzar, is yeah, I'm willing, but I think I'll do you one better. I think I'm going to do a Shadzar headphone frickin' GoFundMe. That's what I'm going to do.
A microphone,
so everyone
yeah.
pitch in $5, and we're going to get Shadzar a frickin' set of headphones.
I don't know. That's funny. All right. Anything else, gentlemen, before we close the show? I think that we have.
Celestian had one suggestion of do one for reference manuals.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, yes. Let me put his name attached to that.
No. He also said don't ask me because I don't know them.
Oh, okay. Well,
that's why we want him.
So I'm going to put this down. Here's what I'm going to do. Watch this.
Hashtag recruited.
And then I'm going to put over here when I think I'll be ready to do that show myself. There we go.
Yeah, so anybody in FGC, if you guys want to pitch in $5
that was just a
for
little joke.
Shadzar microphone.
So 2021 is allegedly on a Thursday. That's funny. Because the formula calculates what it is. Anyway, I'm actually delving into reference manuals, but I'm not myself confident enough to do a show on it. I could probably do a show, but then I wouldn't be able to field questions. So I'm going to give myself a few more months on that, unless some expert on reference manuals wants to show up. Okay. I would ask as a KS, but I don't think I could take the vaping. I couldn't take it.
Well, who wrote the extension, that author extension? I'd like to have that person
Celestian.
There you go, Celestian.
Too late, you're in. He's like, I'm out of here. He's running away. All right, guys. So if you do have show suggestions, yeah, let us know and we'll do it, because this show is twice a week for what we would like to be an hour. But it's very informal, the amount of time we spend, and we'll go through whatever subject we're gonna do. We will cover it thoroughly, and if we have to break it up into 2 shows, we will. Whatever that might be. So I think that's it, guys. Anything else? Any other questions?
That's all I can think of.
All right, and if the chat has no other questions, then I would like to thank everybody for coming, and John Nightsky, Ensky, thanks for being with us this evening, and Leroon, thanks as always for being my co-host, and I will see hopefully Ensky in a future show, and I will see Leroon back here on Tuesday night.
All right, see you later, guys.
All right, take care. And for those of you that are watching the stream, I will go ahead and put up the slides. Thanks for hanging out tonight. That was a good show, and it will be up on YouTube as soon as possible, episode 7. Episode 8, of course, will be the how to advertise yourself to DMs. Not necessarily how to talk, like I can't, but how to advertise yourself to DMs and players, as a matter of fact. And that'll be on March 6th, Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, right back here. Do follow us, guys. Spread the word on the channel if you would. That would be really great. And I'm gonna go ahead and congrats again to Myth Taken, who, by the way, is now a follower. Awesome. He got the license from tonight. And I'm gonna go ahead and post in the chat the commands for you guys.